Aurelia, you could start first if you like.
Oh, okay. Hi everyone. Thank you for coming. Oh, am I answering these questions here or I'm
No,
trying.
no, this is just our poll.
Oh, okay. I just want to be sure I'm doing everything right. All right. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Aurelia Reimer. I am also a transfer student like maybe many of you. Congratulations if you got into any of the UC schools. I think the last school we're waiting for is San Diego, I believe. So if you got into any of the other UCs, congratulations if you applied this year. So I transferred from Santa Monica College to UCLA in 2016. I was a physical anthropology major, so it was kind of like a anthro slash life science type major, which I really enjoyed. Um, and I graduated from UCLA in 2019. And right after that, I completed a postbac program just to boost my GPA for medical school. And so currently I'm in the process of studying for the MCAT. I actually pushed back my MCAT date because I was not ready, which is okay. And I'll be applying next year. And I currently work as the STEM program coordinator for a program called the Center for Community College Partnership, which is housed at UCLA. And we assist students at community college of all majors to transfer to their dream schools, usually a UC, but we do help students who are interested in applying to Cal States and private schools. So hopefully I'm able to answer your questions and you get to learn a lot today, I guess. And I'll kick it over to Vanessa.
Well, that's so awesome. I wish I had known of something like that. And like maybe we can discuss more about my experience transferring from community college, being first generation and not really knowing that whole process. So I'm Vanessa, and I was born and raised in Sonoma County and ended up going to Santa Rosa Junior College. I stayed there for 4 years before being able to transfer to UC Berkeley. I actually was deciding between Cornell or Berkeley, and that was just like an exciting time for me and a very difficult decision. But I ended up going to UC Berkeley. I don't regret it. I had an incredible time there. I learned so much from my instructors. I majored in nutrition and toxicology with a specialization in physiology and metabolism. So it was very like I could take really any class I wanted. They only had a few major requirements. And so I really enjoyed that ability to take classes in whatever I thought I would enjoy. And then I also graduated in 2019. And since December 2019, I started working in a research lab doing public health research at Stanford. Now I am about to start medical school in the fall, so I'm just very excited, and I have to commit on May 2nd. So that's this Tuesday. So we'll see where I decide to go.
Cool. Oh, go ahead, Jobin.
Oh, no, no. So, no, I don't have like anything. I just was gonna say, like both of these are top. Letting the attendees know they're really top students, and so I know some of their stories. So I'm gonna poke and prod them a little bit because they're both very shy. Um, so Vanessa, talk about your the scholarship that you applied when you were in community college and before you went to Berkeley. Can you share that a little bit and what it was?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, okay, I don't know if we're able to see how many of our attendees have already or are in the process of transferring and how many are still at community college. Do we know that or
Yeah, 100% of them are at community college.
right
So
now?
right now, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'll start off by saying, so one of the major reasons I went to community college was because when I was in high school, applied to universities, I was accepted, but the idea of having to pay or getting loans was just so scary for me and for my family, and I didn't know how to go about that. And so I stayed at my community college, and it was such a great decision because I was like, okay, this is my opportunity to continue to work and to be able to apply to many scholarships. And so that's what I did. And I was able to get a full ride after. So I didn't pay anything for community college, just applying to scholarships. And then I applied to one right before transferring called the Jack Kent Cook Foundation Scholarship. And this is available to community college students the fall before transferring. So when you're applying to universities to transfer, it's also available to middle school students and high school students. And once I applied, I was just told of it. I applied and I actually forgot about it. And it wasn't until some months later in February that I was told that I received this scholarship and it was going to pay for all of my tuition and living costs of my undergraduate transfer institution, whether I went to a private, so like Cornell, they would have paid for everything, or at UC Berkeley, they paid for everything, my housing. And I also get to go as part of this program for 2 summers, we get to go and meet other students in Virginia. They pay for your travel and they pay for everything. And since then, so like since 2017, when I transferred, I have been able to just continue meeting with students. I met some Jack Kent Cook students from the Bay Area actually last weekend, and we help each other and motivate each other. And a lot of them start their own startups, also go to med school. And it's just a great way to network with other amazing, incredible students. And I think having a community like that is really valuable. Additionally, I know I'm talking so much, but also they pay for grad school. And so they're paying up to $150,000 for my medical school. So that's another blessing from it.
It's a pretty good deal. I put the link to the scholarship on there and just a little bit of description about it. But again, this is like a really good place for you guys to ask your questions. So Aurelia, talk about what you did at Santa Monica College before transferring to UCLA. What some of the things that you were involved with and how you were able to connect.
Yeah, so sorry for any background noise that you may hear. So at Santa Monica College, that's kind of like really where I kind of got a lot of leadership experience. So if you think I'm shy now, I was worse back then. Like I wouldn't talk to people at all. And I knew that needed to change when I, transferred, because part of the thing about transferring is I have to sell myself on the application and really talk about the contributions that I've made in my community, on campus, things like that. And at that point, I had nothing. So I really forced myself to get involved through different programs on campus. So maybe my second year at my community college, I joined a program called the Black Legions program. It was kind of our version of a Black student union. But the difference between a Black student union and my program was we did have a club portion where we got to know other students, hung out, did different activities together, but we also had a program portion where we had counselors that was specific to the students in our program and with scholarships, things like that. So I definitely took advantage of those scholarships to fund my education. Additionally, I kind of ran for office and became the historian, vice president, president, and I was, in charge of various different things. Like, for example, when I was a historian, I had a connection. I knew a Tuskegee Airman, so I invited him to come and speak to our students. So that was really amazing. And then that kind of started my whole trajectory of acquiring leadership experiences. So I moved on from there to go in our associated students, where I served as a commissioner and did a lot of activities for students to build campus life on campus. So get more students to be acclimated and comfortable on campus and participate in things. We had a program at the time called President's Ambassadors, where I would go around to different events in the community and represent the office of the president for my my community college. Also, we had this internship, or we still have this internship program called the Del Ride internship, and it's usually marketed for history and political science students. And I'm pre-med and a life science major, and I was like, I'm not going to get accepted, but I did. And basically, I was selected to intern in DC for a summer. So I kind of made the internship my own, where I interned in a congressional office and did work, health related work. And then I also worked part-time for a nonprofit organization called Care USA that does a lot of work, global health work around the world. So that was really awesome. And then did, the traditional pre-med stuff, like there's a program called Care Extenders at UCLA. I did that program. And then when I got into UCLA, I did another program called ARC, which is assessing residency eye care. So I got to meet a lot of different residents in various departments while I was a student at UCLA. And that's just like a brief synopsis of all of the stuff that I've done. I don't want to bore you all, but yeah, kind of community college is like a really saving grace for me. Yeah.
So Aurelia, you got a lot of leadership experience and clinical experience while you were at community college. What about after you transferred to UCLA? Were those opportunities available to you? Were they less? Were they more? Were they more competitive? Were they less competitive?
There were definitely more opportunities, and some of them were more competitive than others. So for me, I had a lot of amazing opportunities. Some I didn't take upon, which in hindsight, I wish I did, but my situation at the time, I couldn't really do it, even though I wish I would have. But the last program I mentioned called ARC, which is Assessing Residency Eye Care. It's a pre-health organization. It's specifically for students who are enrolled at UCLA versus like the other program I mentioned, Care Extenders. It's housed at UCLA, but any student can participate. You can participate while you're in community college or even at a different university, as long as you can get to the hospital and volunteer. It doesn't matter. But at UCLA, there's so many organizations and clubs that you can participate in. It's a little bit overwhelming, the amount of opportunities for students. So I would just, start slow and just be very, very, selective with the programs that you choose to participate in. So I did ARC, volunteered 4 hours a week, did actual extra work too, because we did have monthly meetings. We had committees within our program. So I participated in our poster committee, where we did research questions and presented our poster during our poster week in spring. And then the next year I actually led that committee. And then I continued in Care Extenders while in that program as well. And then I joined the MAPS program, which is kind of like the pre-health version of SNMA, which is I forgot the name, what the acronym stands for, but it's basically for African-American students who are in medical school. So MAPS was the pre-health version, pre-med version of that. And that's where I first kind of got my first like official mentor for medical school. So because like at the time I kind of didn't really know what I was doing, but I figured it out because of that program and kind of got a little bit more comfortable with the process of transitioning or prepping to apply to medical school. And then also worked for the program I currently work for as a student. So I didn't mention before, I was a student in this program before in CCCP before I transferred. And then when I transferred in, I was hired as a peer advisor. So I was going back to community colleges and, working with students who haven't yet transitioned or applied to transfer and helping them with their applications and things like that. And then telling them about UCLA and all of the opportunities at UCLA for students once they're admitted. There's a lot of different research opportunities to students. Also, if you don't know, like the UC system, we have our own kind of like police department and fire department and things like that. So for the ambulance system, I forgot what the name of the program is. Students who are pre-med could apply to be kind of like an EMT. I decided not to do that because at the time, it's kind of embarrassing. At the time, I didn't have my driver's license and I needed to have a driver's license. So that's really the main thing that prevented me from doing the program. But in hindsight, it was a blessing in disguise because it was a lot of work. Like it would be like sometimes 14-hour days 2 times a week. And I was like, oh, I got to study. Like, I can't do that. And then I would have had to give up a lot of the other things I was doing on the side outside of class. So yeah, just look for those different opportunities. There's like a program called EMRA, which is like emergency medicine research program that was really cool. So yeah, there's just so many different opportunities, so many that I can't even name at UCLA.
What about you, Vanessa? What did you do after you transferred from SRJC to Berkeley? What are some of the things that you did besides being an excellent student?
Yeah, so after transferring, so the summer before transitioning to UC Berkeley, I did a program called PUMAS at UCSF Gladstone's Institute. And I was able to work on research focused on HIV shock and kill therapy. And I was able to present a poster at the end of the summer. So that was just really exciting because before that in community college, I was able to, as a student intern, so unpaid, do some mice work and be in a lab as well. So I had some experience there, but here I had more of that independence and I was getting paid. So this is just a great program and it's associated with UCSF as well. And then after that, once I started at UC Berkeley, I think what did I join? I really focused on my studies, and that's what, like, I was talking to Juvine and Aurelia earlier, that I didn't go to many like fun events, but I did join like tennis club. I joined the Chicanos Health Education Club, and I also did some two major volunteering. One was, or I guess you could say three. Okay, so one was there was a free clinic where I was able to do like a teaching assistant position for a nutrition class, and it was in Spanish. So I was able to teach this class in Spanish, and we would do cooking demonstrations with them, and it was for people who, were uninsured and at risk for diabetes. So that was just a great experience. Also at Berkeley, they have student run courses. So I was able to take one on massaging, and I would go and massage houseless women that would come to a free clinic in Berkeley. That was also just a really great experience that I was able to talk about throughout my applications and interviews. And the other thing, so one of the fun classes I took was a law class, Law and Society for the Immigrant Rights Movement. And with that class, we were able to partner with organizations. And for me, I was able to partner with Airbnb. And through Airbnb, I was able to help them with one of their programs for houseless communities, and refugees. So that was just a really cool kind of side project I was able to work on as well. Then, as you know, I graduated in 2019 and did a summer of just MCAT studying. And also every Friday I would go in to help with at Stanford, it was a research lab as well, but it was more focused towards, again, public health. I wanted to make that transition from like lab bench work to public health. And so this is how I dipped my toes. That's like the phrase, right? Into that transition. So I just emailed someone at a mental health research lab there at Stanford. And I said, hey, can I come in every Friday? And they just said yes. So I was able to go in. It was, again, unpaid. But because I had saved up enough that summer, I was fine. And I could be living with my parents. So I was fortunate in that way to have that time off. And then eventually I got my job in December. So that's a few things. I can continue to talk more about like another major one, or should I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's been a few more things that I've done throughout my gap years, but one huge thing, and something that would be really cool and you all can start doing now, is here in every county, you could be a district representative for different boards. And I joined the mental health board here in Sonoma County, and I'm a district representative. So that means that I'm supposed to, along with one other person, represent, for me, it's District 3, and, listen to or know what, the people here, or like my community here, wants in terms of mental health or what their needs are, and bring that to the board. One of the things that I have noticed is there are so many resources, but the community doesn't know about them. And so now I'm working on developing a mental health fair for our Spanish population here. So that's just an exciting way to get involved. I think if you go look at how you can, if you're interested in that, how you can join a board for your county. Okay, and Javina's adding some more things. I've also done something called so I did 2 things: the Stanford Summer Community College Pre-Med program. And that's when I really find, like, after joining that program, I was for sure going into medicine, because I was doubting myself a lot before that. And in this program, you take a summer to be at Stanford, and you get to meet other students, and you get to really learn about the application process during community college. You get to shadow physicians. I got to shadow a pediatric surgeon at Stanford. And you also that's where I got my mentor, and this mentor has stuck with me throughout. She's wrote my letters of recommendation for medical school, and I highly recommend that one. After that, I got into their leadership education for aspiring physicians program, also at Stanford. That's a year-long program where you actually develop or pilot a program, and you learn about leadership skills. So that was really exciting for me. Also, another great community, and a community where, just joining that, I knew that this was the path for me to go into medicine. And again, just never looked back. I was able to gain that confidence that this was the right path.
Yeah, and I think what Vanessa's talking about is really important. Your region, like, obviously some of the things that she was involved with are close in Northern California, Bay Area region, and actually Aurelia runs a lot of these programs at UCLA, and she will talk about every single one of them, and I put some links in there. But it's really important to tap into your local community. Now, if you're sitting in Fresno and saying, my gosh, there's no program, there's actually a lot of programs at UCSF Fresno as well. And so, it would have been great if we could have tracked down 10 people to 10 various regions in California or even outside, but, we didn't have that ability. Aurelia, can you talk about some of the things that you were involved with and that you actually run now at UCLA? And I put some of the links on there as well, and some of the programs that are both in person but also remote.
Yeah, okay. So with the Center for Community College Partnership, like I mentioned before, we assist students who are interested in transferring to the universities, specifically the UC system. We specialize in UCLA because we are housed at UCLA. So we are trained by admissions on all things admissions related. So we can really help students make sure they're presenting themselves in a well-rounded manner. And then within our program, we have different, initiatives, communities that we specifically serve. So I was hired to do the STEM community. So I do a lot of workshops on finding research opportunities as a community college student. We do different things like journal club, where we teach students, or I invite a professor to do a journal club where students are taught how to read dense scientific articles in an efficient manner, just because that's not something that's usually required of the community college curriculum. But usually if you're a STEM major and you transfer to a university, or you're interested in finding research, is going to be required of you to be able to do that. So I try to do my best to provide tools to students who, community college students who don't necessarily have exposure to those things that you would need once you transition to a university. And then, so in addition to that, I'm also working with our biochem and chemistry department at UCLA to possibly start a research program for community college students. It's still in the works. I didn't realize, creating a program is going to be so hard, but it's kind of difficult. But, we're checking on, we have, some solid proposals that we are working on, and then trying to reach out to specific colleges down here in Southern California that are, really underserved and need that assistance, especially with STEM. And then in addition, we are in the process, I'm not gonna really talk much about it because I don't want to spoil it or jinx it, but we are possibly working with some organizations that are trying to start a community college to medical school pipeline through community colleges and a partnership with universities and medical programs. So that's kind of in the works. Hopefully actually is established soon. But yeah, we're still kind of applying for grants and things like that at this time. And then in addition to that, I also work I work on our Black Site committee. So one of the numerous communities that we service, our African-American Black student population is one of the communities that we service. And I, along with two of my colleagues, work to service that population through a program called Emoja at the community colleges. So there's a statewide commitment to Emoja for the UC. So we work with UC-wide Emoja. We have one at UCLA that we're working with current UCLA students who are part of Emoja, trying to get more students to really see, more African-American Black students to see themselves as competitive and worthy to apply to a school like UCLA. In the past, just out of transparency, UCLA hasn't been that welcoming to Black and African-American students. So we're trying to do what we can to change that narrative and get more students to apply. Coming out on the other side of the pandemic, we have so many more resources that we didn't have at the beginning of the pandemic. The most notable one is that we do have a Black Ruin Center resource center that we did not have before. So that's something that's really, really amazing. And then there's more of a commitment to service Black and African-American students at UCLA. So I'm working on doing a lot of work through that realm as well. We recently just had an event with Emoja to really see what the need is for the students. Number one, getting them exposed to the resources at UCLA and understanding what the admissions process is, especially what UCLA and the departments at UCLA are looking for in their candidates and applicants, but then also sharing the resources with them that they would utilize as students, so they understand how to navigate campus even before they're on campus and feel comfortable and feeling like they belong, and know that there are students on campus that are here and to be a part of their community. And also through that, we also work with faculty and staff members within the Moja program at the various community colleges to answer any questions that they may have, also misconceptions that they may have about UCLA and our application and admissions process. So it was a really successful program, and they're actually already asking us to redo it next year. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So hopefully if I'm still in this position, then that'll be something that I will be continuing next year. I don't know if you have any other questions.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, type them away in the Q&A section, like we've been doing them every week. I can't keep poking and prodding them because I know a lot about both of them. So I may, I don't know. I know a lot about them, so there may be questions that you would have that I may not know how to ask them. I'm going to ask Vanessa, how did you do at community college with terms of time management and study skills? What are some of the important steps that you took to be a successful student at the JC and then also at Berkeley? And how did you make that transition?
Yeah, so I think, well, I'll start off by saying I think community college was more difficult than UC Berkeley. It might not be what most people think, but I thought so. One thing, just to be, truthful, once you get to the upper division courses, it's more of, more towards the major that you choose and not so much just courses that you need to take that everyone needs to take, right? So you get more of an option. So that just made it a little bit more fun. But back at community college, I think, you're with such a diverse community. Some people are there just for fun. Others are, in high school still. Others may be older and coming back. So I think what helped me was finding communities that were also pre-med or pre-health or very much into the bio classes that I was also taking. And so I joined Latino Medical Student Association, also the biology club. And that's where I found a core group of students that were also super, super nerdy like me and into the research and, just curious about their classes. And so we would study together. I found like 3 other students that I was able to, meet up with and form these study groups with. I think I'm like an introvert extrovert. Like I will be the one to form study groups, but I'm also just like a shy person and sometimes prefer to stay home. But yeah, so I would form study groups and I would study a lot. I would just not be worried or concerned though, because as long as I knew that I was studying and going to make these relationships with going to office hours and making relationships with my instructors, that kind of reduced a lot of the stress because, talking to them, it was like, okay, you are on track and you're going to do well, or just being around other students and seeing what did I not know and how can I prepare better for this upcoming exam, for example. So I think that made a huge difference for me. Also, I had to take care of my 2 younger siblings. So I also had to juggle like coming back home, picking my siblings up and all of that. But luckily, I did have a car. I was able to drive. And so I would just have to adjust my schedule and be very focused. So I don't know if that made sense to everyone.
Yeah, there's 2 questions. One of them is, and this is actually goes to Vanessa. Can you talk about the district board volunteering in your community and how to get contact with the correct person? So yeah, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So for me specifically, what I did was, so there was a Latino who was actually running for vice mayor or mayor of the county, or sorry, of my city. And so I was helping him out when he was passing out like flyers about him. And then he's actually the one who told me about this. Otherwise, I would not have known. So that just goes to say, networking and just putting yourself out there is just so important. But now that you guys know that you can do this, all you have to do is Google, like, so for example, I Googled Sonoma County boards, or like if you look up mental health board and like vacant positions, or maybe your county and vacant positions, it'll just come up like all the vacant positions and different boards. Like there's some focused on like the environment, others focused on more towards behavioral, on like health, more towards like the health, not so much mental health. There's just so many different things on parks and rec that you can join. So I would just Google it, maybe talk to a council member as well, let them know, hey, I'm interested, or someone else there. And again, put yourself out there. But if there's a vacant position, I'm sure you'll be able to get it, as long as you show that you have like a passion towards that. I think you'll be able to get it. I hope that
Yeah.
answers the question.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to add too, if you're under 21, you could also be part of the youth boards as well. And that's a whole separate board that you advise the county board of your county boards. So yeah, and there's 58 counties in California. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and the bigger counties have bigger boards. And then the other part of it too is I would tell you that I speak a couple of languages, so I volunteer teaching citizenship classes, and I have found a lot of resources and people through those organizations that do those types of trainings, and so there's a lot of those opportunities. Um, Talk about this since uh, Aurelia does this, and so can you talk about getting research experience at community college?
Yeah, I actually just talked about this at one of the events prior to this. So the first way I would recommend that you find research opportunities is if you have a STEM program at your community college, join the STEM program. Usually those programs are partnered with other organizations in the area or other research organizations or people who have or are looking for STEM students to give internship opportunities or research opportunities to. They usually reach out to the STEM programs neighboring them at the various community colleges or universities. So first I would join the STEM program. I'll also reach out to the Career Center at your campus to see if they have any research internship opportunities coming up that they know of. The other thing I would recommend you all to do, Vanessa kind of mentioned it, is to put yourself out there. So just go ahead, do research on the nearest community, the nearest university to you and see what labs professors are doing, research that professors are doing at that university, and start emailing people. Just put together like a really brief email template introducing yourself, why you're interested in their research and that you want to join, that you're community college students and you want to get research experience and would love to join. Probably going to have to do it for free. So if you're okay with, putting yourself out there and doing it for free, then that's usually the more common way community college students find it. And if you're able to find different programs, whether it's like through NASA, JPL, things like that, that's how I found my first internship experience. I actually, my first internship was at JPL, and I found it through my STEM program, which was pretty awesome. But I also kind of realized I didn't really care for research. So I'm kind of opposite of Vanessa. Like I prefer interacting with people. So that's kind of like, I really want to be like that clinician that's in the office with patients all the time. So that's kind of some of the ways you can do it. Also, Google is your friend. I always say that to students that I work with. Just do a quick Google search based in Google where you find like summer internships or internships in my area in whatever field that you want. So if you want to do like a biology or life science related, or if you have a more specific thing that you're interested in pursuing, then you can put that in the search bar and see what's out there. You just have to search for it. They're all out there, and just make connections with your professors too. Believe it or not, even though you're at community college, some of your professors may still be involved in research. And so they can, bring you on board with their research or connect you with some of their colleagues that are still doing research. For example, one of my bio professors when I was at community college, prior to teaching, she worked at NIH. And so she still had like a lot of contacts there and was, referring students to her colleagues so they can get research experiences. So you really have to develop those relationships with your professors, and then also just put yourself out there, join clubs and STEM programs at your colleges.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the biggest thing Aurelia just talked about. I'm taking organic chemistry, and I got to just talk to my professor, and he ended up like literally say, "Oh, by the way, my wife is a ER doctor, and if you want to ever meet with her or anything like that." At the minimum, each community college faculty member that you have has a master's degree. So and they've gone through school, they have friends that um, are either physicians, they're married to one, classmates that they went to class with. Another community college professor I had actually, his friend who basically was failing biochemistry in medical school at UCSF. He helped him, he was his roommate, and now he's a dean, is an associate dean at a medical school. And he's like, yeah, if you ever want to get in touch with that person, I could put you in touch with them. So using your faculty, if you don't talk to them, like my organic chemistry, we started with 12 students, we're down to 9. Like we know each other intimately, you and your professor. So if you haven't taken that time to cultivate that, it's going to be much harder for you to cultivate it with a research professor that you may only see in the lab once a week. So use that, I mean, I see my organic chemistry professor, I think 10 to 11 hours a week. So they should know that you're interested in medicine, because you're also going to be asking him for letters of recommendation. So how did you manage to find about such programs? Can you elaborate on that, like which programs, the county board programs, or so if you just, I don't know which one you want to ask, but I know that we both put just Googling county boards, and then
So if I can also
yeah,
just
hold on.
say for that, wait, yeah, June, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to go ahead, sorry.
So I think like if it's overall just programs, again, for transparency, I'll say that I have been very fortunate because I formed very close relationships with a lot of my instructors. I would go to their office hours. I would, be curious about their classes that they're teaching, and they really appreciate that, and just would talk, just talk to them. And so by doing that, a lot of them actually told me about internships that they knew about, and they would write letters of recommendation for me. And so that's one way to go about hearing about programs. So, maybe through your instructors. So form those relationships. Also, that's important because if you're pre-med, pre-health, you need to start thinking about those letters of recommendation. Also, for me, it was also through Latino Medical Student Association. I know Aurelia was part of so many clubs and like a leader in so many of them. So also by joining clubs, they'll provide resources. Also part of Bio Club that I heard about, research opportunities. And yeah, Googling, I think, helps a lot. There's also something called Mi Mentor. They have so many opportunities that are offered through, you make an account and they're constantly posting opportunities. It gets overwhelming, actually, but there's
Yeah,
always like that
we
one
work
thing.
with Me Mentor, and we post a lot of their events. They post a lot of our events. So if you're on our social media, we post a lot of, like, I don't do our social media, but our social media team is really good about posting stuff. This is one other example I want to say is, so I go to the same JC that Vanessa went to, and her and I met a while ago. But almost every instructor or MESA director that I know has mentioned her and have offered to put me in contact with her. And I'm like, oh no, no, we already know each other. And so your faculty are really good people to put you in touch with other people that went before you. So again, like Vanessa and I met by, I don't even know how, oh yeah, I know how we met. We met by accident, and we've just been like texting back and forth and stuff, but we've never met in person. So I don't think I've met Aurelia in person either. That's because of the pandemic.
I'll also, you brought up a good point of, how faculty will connect you to others. And I think I heard, Aurelia, how there's like a pipeline program. I don't know if that's related to SB 40, but I think what made, going back to, the transfer process itself, if you remember, I said I was in community college for 4 years. And so the reason it took so long is because I, coming in, again, first generation, did not really know how to transfer, furthermore, like what any of this process. And so I really depended upon a lot of the counselors there. And I don't know if they've changed this, Jubin, but the counselors were not like focused on pre-med or how to transfer as a pre-med. And so not having someone to tell me what classes not to take or what to take, I instead had someone who told me, you cannot transfer, you go in expecting to only have 2 years there. But, I was told you cannot get out of community college. You have to finish 4 years to get out. So I kind of just followed this path. But the reason why I'm sharing this and going back to, connecting you to someone who had already transferred is that I think that's really important. If you can all, or if you already have, amazing. But I think it is important to have someone who's already transferred as a pre-med from your specific CC, because they'll be familiar and transfer to a university you're interested in. So for example, I was looking actually at Davis, and so that's at Davis, and I know they had certain prereqs for a certain major, but then UC Berkeley had other ones. So if you have specific universities you want to transfer to, or privates even, kind of, try to find someone who did that transfer process as a pre-med. So they're one step ahead of you, and they could really help with like what classes to take. And also, sorry, what was I gonna say? Oh, and also, so you don't waste your time taking unnecessary classes. And I don't know if this is anyone else's experience, but like, for example, neither for Cornell nor UC Berkeley nor med school did I need to take like 4 of the courses that I took, which I was told I needed to take. So I think it's just very important to have someone one step above throughout your whole trajectory into medicine. So that's one other thing I'll say.
And Aurelia, I'm going to put you on the spot. How many community colleges does CCCP work with?
So,
and can you tell about some of the programs you have there with peer advisors on the ground?
Yeah, so officially we have a partnership with 10 community colleges. So we have a partnership with all 9 Los Angeles community college schools. So there's like a school district with LA community colleges. So we have a partnership with all 9 of them. And then we have an additional partnership with Pasadena City College. However, if you're a STEM major, it doesn't matter where you're located, we will assist you because that's a part of our STEM initiative. It's just that you will just have to like work with us remotely. And so a part of our program is that we have what's called a peer advisor, all of whom are transfer students who've gone through the application process, did their classes, was admitted to UCLA, and hired on by our program to be peer advisors. And so as a scholar in our program, so you must apply to our program, become a scholar in order to have access and be assigned to a peer advisor. You would be assigned to a peer advisor based on either the community that you identify with, your major, or if you attend one of the partnership schools that we have a partnership with. And so once you're assigned with a peer advisor, you're required to meet with them at least once per quarter. But you can meet with them as many times as you need to, and you can ask them different questions about their trajectory. They can give you information about tools and resources on how to understand what you need to do to be competitive for admission to whatever university that you wanted to have, and provide you with online resources so you understand what the counselors are telling you. So for example, if you know you want to be a bio major and you want to come to UCLA, you would use this online website called assist.org that lists all of the classes that you need to complete for your major at your community college. And then in addition to that, you can either complete your IGETC, which is a long name. It's an acronym for a long name. I can't remember what the acronym is, but basically it's your general education requirement that you need to complete. So you would do that in addition to your major prep coursework. So this is part of the reason why if you're interested in STEM, it's going to take you more than 2 years to transfer to university, because there's additional coursework that is in sequential order for your major that you must complete in sequential order, or that can make you disqualified for admissions if you don't complete it in the proper order. And then you also need to do your general education requirements. And then there's also information about admissions in terms of your particular major that you're interested in may be very selective. So what does that mean? Is showing you the information of what that means and what we call alternate majors may be at the different universities. There's also something called the UC pathway. So now for the popular, I think 13 to 20 majors in the UC system, there is a dedicated pipeline where if you complete all of those classes, you will be eligible to apply to particular majors at particular UC schools. And then, so these are things like the peer advisor will tell you, because we train them to tell you this information. And so in addition to that, helping you, find internship experience, things like that. So you can, put your best foot forward when you are ready to apply. And then when you are ready to apply, so first off, if you apply to our program this year and you're not ready to apply in the fall, that's okay. You can reapply to be a part of our program the following year. And when you are ready to apply, we are going to be here to help you with your application. So we will not only go through each section of the application, but we also will review your personal insight questions, which are required for your major, and then tell you about the different honors programs at various community colleges that may have a partnership with UCLA, where you would be able to list an alternative or second major, let's say. So for example, if you really, really want to come to UCLA, but you're a bio major and you're not really sure your GPA is up to par with, the trends that has been set the previous year, and if you completed or participated in the honors program that is UCLA TAP certified, so it's UCLA Transfer Alliance program, you will be able to list a second major on your application that you can be considered for if for whatever reason you weren't admitted to your first major. But you do need to complete the prerequisites for that second major as well. So again, that's possibly another reason why it may take you more than 2 years to transfer and be ready to apply to transfer. I know that was a lot of information, but just join our program and we'll help you with all of that. I think I answered your question.
Yes. So Aurelia, if I go to College of Siskiyou and I don't want to go to UCLA, and if I contact or apply to this program, would I be turned away, shunned, or would I be helped?
No, you will be helped, especially if you are part of the California Equity Plan. So if you're an underserved student, especially in this case, if you're a STEM student, you will be, accepted to our program and assist and assigned a peer advisor.
Perfect. So yeah, so there's a lot of resources. Somebody put up there, some of these programs deadlines have already passed. So can you talk, actually some of them we posted are still open. The CCCP one is open, and I think the CERC one is open still. But what if these programs are applications, can you tell us what you would recommend, since some of them have deadlines have passed? I don't know which one they're looking at, but
they
what do
may
you
be
do?
talking about,
What do you do? Yeah.
research programs. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if the deadline has passed, it's passed, but maybe reach out to the office who may be doing the application to see if there's anything they can do. Maybe they did extend the deadline and for whatever reason they didn't post about it. And then if not, just keep that in mind for next year and apply for next year. Usually for summer internships, the applications usually are due sometime in winter. So you should be preparing to apply for these opportunities, in fall, and making sure by the end of fall you submit your application so you don't have to worry about it in winter. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that also keep a little tab or a spreadsheet of saying this program closed this year at this time, check back again. Or also I would say email them, and they may still have spots. And worst case scenario, if they say they don't, have them put you on a mailing list so you know when the applications are opened up again. But I would say everything is a shotgun process. So you apply to many things, whatever's open, whatever's not open. And it's always better to turn something down than to beg to get into something. So that's just my personal opinion on that. But can you guys talk more about the transfer process? And I think Aurelia, you could definitely touch on that, but also what Vanessa put in the chat, that I'm trying to make sure everybody could read it, but I can't do it, and I don't know why. So maybe she could read it out loud after Aurelia.
Oh, I'm typing it right now. Sorry, I was sending it to you too, but
okay, good. So just talk about, so I would say, Aurelia, talk about the transfer process, more of a systematic way, maybe some of the resources that are available, and I'll live tweet it. I mean, I'll live type it, so the different websites and stuff that they can go to.
Yeah. So first I'll just talk about the overall timeline. So if you're interested in the UC system, sorry, I keep talking about the UC system, but it's kind of like, the information I share is kind of universal a little bit, kind of. So for the UC system, the application actually opens August 1st. So that means you can go into the website, create an account, and start working on your application. So start working on your academic section, putting in your extracurricular activities, anything, your work experience, any awards that you may have been awarded with. And then you can also work on your personal insight questions. So I would recommend that you go ahead and start doing that the day the application opens. If you don't have any plans for the summer and you're prepping to apply this coming fall, I would also search the transfer PIQ questions or any other questions that you may have to answer for other universities to transfer, and start working on them during the summer and having people review them that are close to you. So you will have, like, that's usually the hardest, the most difficult part of the application is your personal statement or your personal insight questions. So start working on them. Go find the prompts for them. For the UC system, they don't really change from year to year. So you can go find the PDF online right now, and you can start working on those responses. And then while you're working on those responses, I will recommend that you have 3 people read them. So somebody who really, really knows you well to read what you wrote, then somebody who doesn't really know you, and ask them kind of what do you think about me based on my responses to the questions I selected. And then also have somebody who's really good at grammar and English to proofread for any grammatical errors or punctuation errors before you submit your application. So that will be the first thing. And then also just kind of take the time. So take the time to brainstorm those questions. And then also take the time to think about, everything that you've been involved in, awards, things like that, and write them down so you can put them on your application. The next thing I would recommend you to do is to create a UC TAP account. So Jobin had previously talked about UC tagging. In order to tag, you need to have a UC TAP account. So there's so many acronyms. I'm so sorry. So for the UC tag, it's UC Transfer Admissions Guarantee. Not all of the UC campuses do that. Only I think 6 of the 9 currently accept tag. But in order to tag, you need to have a UC tab, which is a UC Transfer Admissions Planner. And in that planner, you will be able to input all of the classes and the grades you receive for those classes, as well as the units for those classes in your account. And if you do all of them for all of the semesters that you have already completed, and then the ones you are currently in, and then the ones you will complete in the future while you're submitting your application, then you will be able to log into your UC TAP account in the UC application. So having a TAP account, you already did your academic section if you completed all of the semesters that you have participated in, currently are in, and will participate in the future. My only pro tip about that is you will want to use the same email address for your UC TAP account that you would use for your UC application. So that's kind of like the start. So again, reiterating, the application opened August 1st. Because of past years, the application system kind of gets over flooded with a whole bunch of people trying to submit by the deadline. It crashes a lot now. So they actually extended the filing period. So you used to only be from November 1st to November 30th that you can submit your application. You can now submit your application from October 1st to November 30th. And so with that, you have a little bit more time. You have the same amount of time to do your application, but you have more time to file. So what I recommend is go ahead and start working on your application as soon as possible. And if you can, submit your application sometime in October. Usually what we find is, especially when it was only in November that you can file, is that after the Thanksgiving holiday, the system crashes. So if the latest, do it before the Thanksgiving break so you're safe with your application. So that would be the next part of the timeline, is submitting your application. So after that, in January, from January 1st to the 31st, you will have to submit your transfer academic update. So the UC system will, email you asking for you to update your application. So updating the grades you received in the fall, and then also updating your class schedule. So if anything had changed in your class schedule that you reported in your application, you can go ahead and change that information on the UC transfer academic update. After that, it's just waiting to see if you got in or not. Usually you'll find out sometime in April. Some of the UC schools do let you know as early as like the last week in March throughout, the end of April. And then if you got in, congratulations, you got in, and then you will have to decide what school you want to apply to. When you do, you have to do SIR, which is called Statement of Intent to Register. When you do that, you can only do it for one school, and unfortunately, there is a fee associated with it. It's $200.50 fee. I think some students can get it waived. Forgot to mention there is an application waiver for the UC system. So if you qualify for financial aid, usually you will qualify for the application waiver. And with that waiver, you will be able to apply to 4 UC campuses for free. And each additional campus will be $70. And if you don't qualify, unfortunately, you will have to pay for each application that you submit. So again, it's just like one UC application, and then you select which UC campuses for what major you want to apply to in the one application. So sorry for that. But going back to the other side, you've been admitted. You'd submit your statement of intent to register along with your fee. Then you will start receiving emails from the school that you SIR to about different events that you can participate in for new admits, getting acclimated to the campus, things like that. So you will have until June 1st to do that. And then after that, you will have until July 1st to submit any official transcripts that you need to submit for your to your campus. And it's really important for you to do that, because if you don't, you will be placed on a hold and you won't be able to sign up for important things like orientation. And usually when you attend orientation, that's when you select your classes for that first semester or first quarter at your university. So it's really, really important that you stay on top of the deadlines. They will email you about the deadlines, so you're aware of it. So you just need to keep, checking your email and actually reading the emails, because there are really, really important information in those emails that the school sent to you. So that's kind of like the whole timeline of the transfer process. And then again, to help you prepare, you want to use those resources like looking into assist.org to making sure that you're taking the correct courses for your major, and then also completing IGETC, which is the general education requirements for transfer students. Something that you can also do instead of IGETC, if you want to kind of limit your time at community college, is to complete what's called the 7-course pattern. It's kind of like hard to explain. It's really easier to read it from the website. Basically, you have to complete 2 college level English courses, which is usually referred to as UC Math or UC English. And then you have to complete 1 college level math, which is called UC Math. And then 4 courses in 2 of the following subject areas. So it could be arts, humanities, social and behavioral science, or life or physical science. And so that will be kind of like an easier way to do your general education requirements. The only thing I would say about that is if you're applying to a program that does not require IGETC, so for example, if you're an engineering major, usually the engineering majors at the different UC campuses may not require IGETC. You do want to check with the different campuses that you plan on applying to. It's probably recommended that you do the 7-course pattern. If not, I would recommend you to go ahead and do the IGETC. The reason why is because you're not completing that IGETC, you will still be admitted or competitive for admissions. It's just that you may have to take additional courses outside of your major to fulfill those general education requirements, because they're absolutely required in order for you to graduate. So I would go ahead and just get them done, especially at a community college, because it's cheaper. So just go ahead and do that. And then again, just check out the website talking about the UC pathways. So you want to go on the website to see if you're one of your majors, if your major is listed on the UC pathways. So you can go ahead and complete those courses and be competitive for admissions for a whole bunch of different majors within the UC system, instead of just doing it one by one by the different schools. So it's a little bit more streamlined process. What else? I think that's pretty much the transfer process. Once you get acclimated to your university, or when you're applying, you do want to make sure that you understand what system your university that you're applying to is using. For example, Vanessa went to UC Berkeley, they're on semester. I went to UCLA, we're on quarter. So that means when I transferred from my community college to UCLA, I went from having 16 weeks in a semester to only 10 weeks in a quarter to do well in my classes. And so while UCLA, a lot of people say UCLA is hard, it's hard, it's hard. It's not that the classes are any more difficult than the classes at community college. What makes it harder is that you have less time to get an A. And if you fall behind, it's very difficult to, catch up. Like, you have to stay on it, because especially if you're a science major, you can have like an exam every 3 weeks, or if you have midterms, then you have a lot of material that you have to remember for that one exam, and then another one at the end of the quarter for finals. So yeah, I know that was a lot of information. I'm really, really sorry. I have a tendency to ramble, but I hope you got it. But yeah.
One of the other things is I would add is, if you're on our listserv or follow our social media, Aurelia's team puts on a application. You call it boot camp, or?
Yeah, it's an application boot camp where
Boot
we
camp.
we go through every section of the application for students, regardless of what UC campuses that you're applying to. Because again, like I mentioned, it's one application for all the UC campuses. So we really just go in and talk about what you should be putting where and why, and how you should be listing it, and then also reviewing your PIQs. And we also have examples of really great PIQ responsive and very weak PIQ responses, so you get an understanding of what we're talking about. Because when you're admitted, I don't know if a lot of students know this, but you're not necessarily admitted to the school, you're admitted to the major. So you need to make sure that you are putting what the department wants to see. So in addition to your academics, you also need to be a well-rounded student. It's not enough anymore for you to just have a 4.0. Like, we see students who have 4.0s that get denied all the time because all they went to class. You need to, in addition to go to class, you also need to be involved on your campus or involved in something outside of class. And you need to also talk about that in your application.
Yeah, so I could tell you that I went to one of the sessions and they literally tell you how to do it. I also know another person that applied the year before and they didn't get into a UC, and then they went through their boot camp and they got in. So all that credit is due to Aurelia and her team, but also the person doing the work. But so yeah, so there's a lot of resources for you to do that. I know Vanessa wanted to add something too about the transfer process.
Oh, did I? I think Aurelia got a lot in.
About
And I feel like
kind of.
I'm glad you still know so much, and you do this work right now, so I kind of have forgotten that process. I started to smile while you were talking, because I'll just say I was very strategic, and this might help others, but I was strategic that last year I was at community college in terms of how I would spread out my classes. So I took all of the easier classes of what I had to take that fall, so that the grades that I got that fall is what I would submit in my application. And then that spring, though I still needed to keep up my GPA, I would still, I think, get accepted. Is it that you get accepted or before they can even see those grades? So I kind of took the more difficult classes for my very last semester. I saved those which was I hated botany. So I kept botany and I think the second semester of OChem to that semester. And so I got straight A's that fall, and then maybe my second B ever that semester. So I still did well, but knowing it was going to be difficult for me, I just strategized that. Well, yeah, well, strategy for y'all.
Yeah, that's a really great strategy, but unfortunately things are so competitive now that they don't even want that. Like they want you to take all, like if you have like you Vanessa mentioned she took her OChem like in spring. If that's a part of your prerequisites, and you're applying to like a very
Well, they will look at the grades. Like they looked at
They'll
my
look
grades.
at-
They still needed to. So I
Yeah, they
still
still
did
need
well, but I'm saying I felt like a little less like stressed about it. Like,
yeah,
I
no,
still did well. Y'all still got to do well.
yeah, you definitely still have to do well because it's called a provisional admission. So they still wait to
Yeah,
see
I'm not
your
saying
grade.
like don't get bad.
Right.
I'm saying like you'll be less stressed.
No,
Maybe.
yeah, that's true.
Being real here.
Yeah, that's true. But what I was just gonna say was, if you're applying to a very selective major, and like for example, the OChem class is required for your prerequisites. If your major is very, selective, they actually want you to complete that in fall so they can see like the whole story in terms of your prerequisites for that particular major. So that's the only thing I will kind of change. If you have additional hard courses that are not necessarily required for your major, then definitely, do Vanessa's suggestion in terms of taking it in spring. Because as long as your, GPA doesn't drop significantly, if you don't get a C or anything lower, then you'll be fine. But yeah, that would just be my little
I
edit.
remember like my major. So I was in the College of Natural Resources at UC Berkeley, nutrition and talks. They really wanted to look at my OChem, and I still needed to do that second semester. So I knew that they were still going to look at that very heavily, because that score was just really important to them. But because I had gotten an A the first semester, and I did get, that was my B the second semester, it was still wasn't that bad. I was still easily admitted. So I'm not saying to anyone like do poorly, but it's just like, you can strategize, but do look. One thing is like, you could take matters into your own hands sometimes. All of this sounds very overwhelming, but if you're confused on what classes to take for your specific major at a college, university, just call them directly and tell them. I get phone anxiety, so like I know that can be really difficult to do, but just you feel better after doing it, and like I feel so happy I did it afterwards. So just call, I would say also.
The one thing is, can you tell what pre-med courses they should take at the CC that would also transfer into their major? If, like, let's say if you don't have a place that you could go, what would you recommend for that?
Is that a question for me?
Anyone?
Oh, okay. Well, usually if you are a STEM major, usually the pre-med courses are a part of your prerequisites for your major in order for you to be admitted to a university. The only thing that I can think of that it wouldn't be if you're applying to like a STEM, like a traditional science major, but it's like a BA instead of a BS, because the BSs are usually more well-rounded in terms of all of the sciences, where if you get a BA in like biochemistry, which I had a friend who transferred to Berkeley as a BA in biochemistry, her requirements were a little bit more focused in terms of chemistry and biology, so she didn't really have to take many like physics or math classes, for example. Yeah, like if you're applying to any STEM major, it's usually incorporated in your major. If you're not going to be a STEM major, but you are interested in pursuing medical school or anything like pre-health, anything, usually you have to take a year of biology, a year of general chemistry, a year of OChem. Depending on the medical school, you have to take biochem, like a semester of biochem, which is, I've been advised to go ahead and just take it so I won't select myself out of any medical schools. And then math, I believe. Well, you have to take math in order to be able to take like certain like physics and math. Oh, you also have to take physics, but you also need to take math in order to get to the physics and certain chemistry classes, because it's, again, sequential order. So those are the classes that I would recommend students take. Yeah.
Awesome. This is a question I'm going to ask both of you. And I know both of you Well, so this is a question. How could you explain more on how you ladies were able to put yourself out there and get more involved in your community? Certainly someone who struggles with anxiety, depression, and also I would add imposter syndrome because I think everybody struggles with that. So I'll let you ladies answer that each.
So I struggled a lot with like just like my self-esteem and like so like and so that like further into like maybe some depression too at like some point throughout community college, and like it got really bad where it was just really difficult to get out of my house. And so I think like during very low times it really helps, of course, like seeing um a therapist. Wasn't seeing one, but just like talking to people, I think really helped. And then like more so for putting yourself out there, I think another thing that helped for me was I was like co-president of things, or like if I had an idea of like, one of the things I was able to do was I was able to create or pilot a high school mentorship program. So this idea, I brought it up with a friend. And so I was able to do this with a friend. I was able to be co-president with someone. So someone was there to help me also through the process. For example, if you're like feeling very shy or anxious about something, maybe they can take over for speaking out of an event when you don't feel like it, or, you collaborate in that way. So that might help in terms of some anxiety and being able to lead things. And like if you have an idea and want to put yourself out there, you're doing it with someone else. So I think these are things that helped me. And also just a lot of my motivation comes from the like just remembering where I come from. So again, just like my parents are very low income, they were immigrants, and like just remembering that and like coming home and like still seeing my family, working really hard. It's like I have such an immense privilege to be in these spaces, so I'm not going to give up. And I think that kept pushing me forward.
For me, it's kind of similar to Vanessa. I also come from a low income first gen environment. We're technically not immigrants. My mom is from St. Thomas, which is an American territory. So, but I am an only child, so I had like a little thing that I had to figure out there. I feel like I'm naturally social, but I do get a lot of anxiety and also imposter syndrome. And I have a tendency to really compare myself to other people really badly. And it makes me get really down on myself. So I'm still working through that. But I didn't realize until I transferred how much that affected my trajectory in my education. And so while I was at community college, I really struggled with the whole imposter syndrome and anxiety. And I didn't know that's what it was until I got to UCLA. So I didn't say how long I was at my community college. I was there for a long time because I just didn't know how to do stuff. For example, I didn't know how to study for science. So I literally was failing classes because I didn't know how to study. And then I figured it out and I was like, oh, okay, that's what happened. And so I started doing better. And so what was different for me was for the UC system, like especially UCLA, when you have to repeat courses, they just look at your better grade. But for medical school, they don't do that. And I was like, oh, my GPA is terrible. So that's part of the reason why I did a post-bac program, because I knew that, and I knew no matter how well I did at UCLA, it wouldn't be enough for me to like go out of UCLA and apply to medical school. So I just took the time out to go to do a formal post-bac, because I also knew that I needed to learn more information about the medical school process, that while I did have more information from going to UCLA, there's still so many large gaps that I had that I didn't realize I had until I was admitted to my post-bac. And then we had seminar classes about the application process, which was a huge help for me. But yeah, so I'm getting off topic. So going back, speaking to other people, getting comfortable with going up to people helped me a lot. I also have it like this thing with authority. So I know office hours were there, and I tell people to go to office hours now, but that's not something I did, mainly because I wasn't comfortable around my professors. Like I thought me being anxious, like I'm really in my head a lot. And so I think people don't like me when they not even thinking about me, basically. So I'm thinking like, oh, I'm not doing well in these courses. And if I go to office hours, my professors are just going to look at me and not want to help me and be like, oh, you're going to waste my time because you're not going to do well anyway. So that was like my thought process in community college, which I now realize that was not correct thinking. So I don't know, just me getting involved on campus kind of helped me, just especially finding my own community, finding community and people who like I felt comfortable around helped me feel more acclimated to my campuses, whether it was SMC or UCLA or even my postdoc program. So I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I rambled, but yeah.
I could tell you for me is I've always like I'm not a shy person, but I always have this feeling of like going to office hours, and my professor finding how stupid I am because I have this big thing of like I didn't graduate from high school, so I always felt like afraid of going to office hours because somehow my professor know how dumb I am and he would just fail me because he would know. But I actually found the more office hours I use, the smarter I feel, but also I end up tending to go down the rabbit hole sometimes, just like studying things that may not be on the test or the wrong information. So I found that it's actually helpful when you do that, because then you get directed to do that. The other thing is, I always try to do something that I'm afraid of because I think it just builds confidence. And the last thing is like being shy, and um, that's something that I work in healthcare, and you literally say hi to someone and you do very invasive procedures to them. So if you're wanting to go into medicine, and if this is something that you could work on now, because you literally say hi to someone and you're like, for me, my job is I say hi to someone and I'm sticking them with a needle. So, um, and you kind of have to build that confidence. That's something that I do very naturally. And I've built that confidence that I'm not shy, and I could stick somebody with a needle and by just saying hi to them. But as a doctor, you're gonna have to be able to do that. And if you're shy and not, putting yourself out there, that's something you could start working on now. My whole shyness is that I feel like I'm stupid and if I ask a question. Um, so yeah, I would definitely say that you should definitely um, do this. This is a question, I think this is just for Aurelia, but about UCLA housing, but also maybe Vanessa could talk about housing at Berkeley because they're both uberly expensive cities for housing. And how did you guys manage your housing at those two uber expensive cities?
Sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so I don't know what happened to my computer. It froze. And so if you hear, feedback, I'm sorry, because I'm logged on still to my computer for some reason. I did hear your question, so I'll just go ahead and answer that really quickly. So for UCLA, my initial plan wasn't to live on campus because I live so close to campus. But I decided to do that. And so for you all who are interested in applying to UCLA, actually UCLA just committed to guarantee housing for both years for transfer students. So for 2 years, so you will be admitted for your junior and senior year. You'll have priority for your housing. So that's an amazing opportunity. To pay for it, it is really expensive. So usually you would either just apply for tons of scholarships so you can pay for it or take out loans for your housing, or you can live off campus. For UCLA, there's something called the co-op, the university co-op, and it's literally like one street over from campus. A lot of students that go to UCLA live there. A lot of students who go to SMC live there, and some neighboring universities live there, and it's really, really inexpensive. So you'll have like really cheap rent, like maybe like $600 to $800, depending on your room. And then every week, I think you have to do 4 hours of like service. So either cleaning or, doing things around the co-op to make sure everything is clean. That I think that's a great trade-off for like such a cheap, housing option, because usually when you share apartments, you could be, I don't know, sharing a room, but still be paying like $1,000 a month plus utilities. And with the co-op, it's just you're just paying whatever the amount for the room is, and everything else is included in that amount. And then you just have to do 4 hours of some type of service every week. So that's kind of like the housing situation. It is like really expensive, but for me at least, I know money is a huge thing, but if you can at least live on campus for at least 1 year, mainly because that's a really amazing way to feel acclimated to the campus. The dorms on campus, which we call the Hill, have a lot of amazing events and activities for you to get to know other students at UCLA. And then if you also want to get involved on campus, a lot of the activities happen in the evening. So if you don't live close to campus, it could be kind of difficult for you to get involved on campus. And also the dorm food is amazing. Like, it's like, for real, it's really, really good. So I would recommend at least you live for 1 year and then find something else after, or you can go ahead and live in the co-op, which is close enough. It's just like maybe a 10-minute walk from campus and you're here. So those are some of the housing options. If you go through housing at UCLA too, there's different, dorm options. And then you can also do off-campus university housing, which is a little bit cheaper than any of the dorms. So hope that answered your question.
The other question I have is, I'm sorry, Vanessa, do you want to talk about your?
Oh, I'll quickly, so there's co-ops also, because I graduated in 2019, so I'm not sure what changes there have been at UC Berkeley. But for housing there, most of the undergrads are in, or from what I remember, are in the dorms. So a lot of the transfer students did opt for either the co-ops or, as Aurelia mentioned, or off-campus housing. I was fortunate that I had the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation to pay for all of my living expenses, including my off-campus housing, where I was able to live on my with one other roommate. So that was just a unique opportunity for me, though.
Did you feel academically unprepared after transferring to UCLA or UC Berkeley?
For me, I would say yes and no ish. So at UCLA, we have this awesome summer program for students who are invited to participate called the Transfer Summer Program. And so through that, I was invited to participate in that program, thank God. But it helped me really become acclimated to UCLA, especially the academics and how fast-paced things go. So I did like a biomedical research classes and did, all of that stuff to really get acclimated. But it was a little bit different when I actually took my first class in fall. So like I mentioned, I'm an anthropology major, a physical anthropology major. So in addition to like taking all of the traditional science courses, I also had to take anthropology courses. What I wasn't prepared for, because my prerequisites was mostly more STEM, then, social science or humanities, was the writing. That was something that I would say I was not really used to. So the caliber that was expected of me for writing wasn't there because I took like all STEM courses. So that would be the only thing that I really struggled with. But in terms of like my science courses, it was just the courses were faster. That was the only thing that I had to, acclimate to.
So UC Berkeley is still semester, so I went from not changing in that way, in that sense. Like I said at the beginning, I thought community college was way more difficult, versus at UC, it was a lot of really fun courses I could take, and I really enjoyed my professors who would talk about their research. And granted, you hear UC Berkeley is really difficult, and it is. I had to study many hours, and I was in the library a lot of the time with my friends, but I just really enjoyed studying, and I really enjoyed what I was studying, that it was just really easy. And in that sense, it is like, it's all curved. I think you might have heard that about UC Berkeley. They curve a lot of their scores, so you do want to, obviously it can be difficult because there can be like that type of competition where your grade is also dependent on what others score. And that's like another thing is like I've always been like, oh, people probably know way more than me. I'm probably like so behind. But in the end, you realize that they're also like probably thinking the same thing. And as long as you just put in like the effort that you need to put in, it turns out okay. So I think like study tips could be another whole different topic, but I was really prepared, over prepared actually. It was a lot of fun for me.
The other question is, do you have any information about transferring to Ivy League schools from community college like Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, MIT? I can tell you, she's not here today, but our president for this organization applied to a couple of private school, and I think she already heard back from one, and I think it was Yale. She got accepted too, so I could post her email and chat, and you could ask her. Does Aurelia or do you guys want to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just add really quickly. It's definitely doable. It's just a little bit difficult in terms of the classes that you need to take. There is no kind of like assist.org, if you will, for the Ivy League. So you would have to really be proactive and reach out to them to see what classes you would need to take for your majors. But it's definitely doable. I know people who got in, like Vanessa got into Cornell. Another one of my friends got into Cornell as well. I also worked with a student who got into Stanford as a transfer student. So it's definitely doable. It's just that you will definitely have to be more proactive because unfortunately, these schools are, very selective, number one, but number two, the way they're built is like not for transfer students. And I don't want you to be worried about that. It's just that because it's not built for transfer students, this information is not going to just be readily available. Like you have to work to get the information you need to know to take the courses that you need to do to be competitive for admissions for whatever major, and really learn about their admissions process too, because it may be a little bit different from like the information that I previously provided. So yeah, you just have to be proactive and call their admissions office and meet with reps if they have any reps and things like that to make sure that you understand what you need to do and how to present yourself on the application.
Vanessa, do you want to talk about when you applied to Cornell and what was that experience different from the UC?
Yeah, so it was, again, this was some time ago. It was a different application. So I think, I wanted Aurelia to answer this because you are like involved with this still now and up to date. But I remember when I was doing it, it was a lot of actually contacting the school, and just because the process was just so different. And I really, again, like I added in the chat, like sometimes you have to just like take matters into your own hands, because sometimes other people and like some counselors just didn't know that specific process to Cornell. And so I, first I looked into what major really interested me there. Then I contacted the school. Do I have the courses that I need to apply? So I made sure I had that, all the prereqs for that specific major. And then again, the application process was different. So making sure I knew the deadlines. And then what else? Again, I'll advocate for that Jack Can't Cook Foundation scholarship. Like y'all should all apply, because I do think like, if you could say, or even any like national scholarship, or if you would do like pilot a program, or I think schools really like to see like that dedication, or again, something that, we all do something that makes us unique, but if you can highlight yourself in such a way, I think that helps to add to your application. And I mentioned Jack Can't Cook because a lot of their students end up going to private schools. And so I just added that because they said to do that because they like to see like national scholarships or national this and that. So just small tips, but Aurelia is more up to date. This is just my experience back in 2017 when I
Yeah,
got
and I could tell you that the word is out for community college students, and so I know like Princeton, when my nephew applied there out of high school, they weren't accepting transfer students, and now they are. And I think now they're taking up to 100 students a year. And so my nephew went there out of high school, and he's much more smarter, articulate, and handsomer than me. But anyways, um, and so they're taking a lot of students, but I would say if you have not spent any time on their website to know what they look for, what type of applicants they look for, and also their process is, I think that's a really good way to start. And then what also Vanessa said is to contact them and ask them. I mean, that's what's the worst they could say is no. I think there was a question, and I don't know what it was, but it was what's the name again for the housing opportunity for transfer students? I think that's the one Aurelia talked about, right?
Yeah, if you're talking about the on-campus housing, it's just on-campus housing. You do have guaranteed housing for 2 years. So all you have to do is just submit up for housing. And for UCLA, I'm not sure how it works for other universities. I think this is different depending on the university you're attending. But for UCLA, there are there's 4 different on-campus housing options, but there's numerous buildings for those options. So you have to, the application is a little weird where it's just pretty much your demographics and, your personal preferences. Like, how do you, do you like to sleep in the room like cold, or do you like 70 degrees or things like that? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Things like that. So it's just like lifestyle questions. And then you also have to rank the housing based on your top 20. So that could be a little daunting, especially if you don't know what the type of rooms are offered. So for what I did was I just went on YouTube and did UCLA housing tour or room tours. So, students who were UCLA students in the dorms probably gave room tours. So you can see what the different options are like. So if someone had like a deluxe, you can see what a deluxe is. If someone had a plaza, you know what a plaza is. If someone had a suite, like they showed you around the room what a suite looks like, things like that. And I also think with the application may include like floor plans, so you can see what the different options are. Oh, also the different options is classic, deluxe, plaza, and suite. I think those are the 4 options if they didn't add a 5th option that I don't know about. And then again, if you're interested in apartments, they do have apartment options as well. It'll be like single room, double room, triple room. Those options are also available for the different the dorm options that I mentioned. And then you can also look into the co-op. So you can just type in like UCLA co-op and it should pop up. And then you can figure out like what you need to do in order to be considered for a room there. So I hope that answered your question.
So the other question I have is, was spending more than 2 years at your JC harm you in either the transfer or, Vanessa, the admission to medical school?
Wait, what was the question? Sorry, I was reading the
Spending
question.
spending more than 2 years at a community college.
Yeah, what about it?
Did it hurt you in
Mm,
the transfer and also medical school admission?
mhm. Um, so I wouldn't say it hurt me. I think, well, so 2 things. Like, I was able to, I guess, take more classes that went towards my GPA. I was also able to, I guess, use that time to do a lot of other extracurriculars. But again, it was like 4 years and I did feel so behind and I am, now actually older than some of the students in going into medical school right now. It's changing though. I know a lot of students like the average age is now like 24, 25. And so it's actually normal for students to apply later to medical school, and actually it might be changing that's what's recommended and what they look for. So I think in regards to like at that time and looking back, I wish I didn't need to spend 4 years at community college and could have, get done with that faster. And hopefully pipeline programs can make that process easier for students to not have to take unnecessary courses. As I said, like I took courses not like none of the schools actually needed, or I would say like Cornell, neither Berkeley needed, which were the two schools I ended up ultimately wanting to go to. So in that regards, like I do wish it could have been easier. There would have been a pipeline. Also, I was able to apply to this scholarship that last year. And I think it was like that last year that I heard about it, like soon before it was due. So, there are just things that come up serendipitously that you take advantage and you see in the long run and looking back, like, wow, if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't been there for one extra year, I would have not had that opportunity. So always taking advantage of what's available and like how can I continue moving forward with what I have in front of me. Yeah.
So it didn't harm you, and you were able to get into medical school.
Yes, and actually, so I'll say, y'all, I am choosing between UCSF and Stanford. So like y'all can do it and y'all are gonna get there. So yes, I was at community college for 4 years and feel a little older, but it's been an exciting process. So
Yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot. So she got into more than those two schools, but she's choosing between those two. I don't know if you want to say it or not. I don't want to put you on the spot, but Vanessa has a lot of options. Let's put it that way. Other question is, how would you go about finding someone who is one step above you and has transferred from community college and is also a pre-med? Can you guys talk? So yeah, so Aurelia, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. That's a great question. I'm trying to think. So I would say, if you join a program like our program, so some of our peer advisors are pre-med, but again, we're not strictly a pre-health organization. So we probably have maybe 4 or 5 peer advisors, maybe a little bit more, that are pre-med. And so that's kind of like one way to find a transfer student that's pre-med, that, transferred, that's currently at the university. Another thing I would do is maybe research the neighboring universities to you to see what transfer programs they may have, or if there are pre-health organizations there, and email them and ask them if there are any transfer students a part of their organization that you can connect with. If the university has a transfer center, like UCLA has a transfer center, you can reach out to them to see if they're connected with any pre-health students who are transfer students. You can also maybe try LinkedIn. I know that's becoming like a popular thing now, where more students are having LinkedIn accounts, and they usually list that they're transfer students or pre-health. So you can use that as a mode to find people and just message them on LinkedIn and see if you can like talk to them, schedule a meeting, something, go get coffee or something like that. And then you can also reach out to, if there's like a medical school near you, you can reach out to, SNMA, and I forgot the name of the Latino one of that is LNMA, I think. But yeah, you can reach out to those organizations to see if there are medical students who went to community college and are now in medical school, so they can give you insight on that whole process.
yeah, I think you got that. Like that was a great response, great question. Yeah, I'll just second that. Like for me, it was like the Latino Medical Student Association, LMSA. There were students who had transferred, obviously, well, pre-med. And so that's how I was able to know some students. Though I didn't really take advantage of that. It's more of like looking back now, I wish I had really known someone a step above that I'd really contacted and been in touch with. So like, but I knew of students through that. I also like the biology club. There are a lot of the pre-health students. So I took advantage of like, or like I would take advantage of clubs there where, you know, there might be other pre-meds, teachers who like, you know, most pre-meds have to take like a bio class or a certain like OChem, like ask teachers who know of students or like tell them about what you want to do. And they'll probably be like, hey, I know a student who did that. And Aurelia mentioned LinkedIn. I think that's a great like suggestion too.
Um, yeah, so I would say, yeah, I mean, I met Vanessa before, but I know like when you go to the same JC after, you know, like I'm much behind her a few years, but like as like, you know, two people mentioned her, I was like, oh yeah, I already know her. And there's also a medical student at UCSD that somebody mentioned her. And I'm like, yeah, I already met her too. I know who she is. And so, and I was just like, I wasn't really looking for their information. And so it was provided to me. I would say just talking to your professors. I mean, if your professors don't know that what your goals, what your dreams, and what your interests are, I think you're really hurting yourself. Like I said, I'm taking OChem with 9 people in my class. Like like I have my professor's cell phone. Um, Not that most of them would give it out to you, but all I'm saying is that you get to know them, you know, intimately. And but you have to put yourself out there. You have to go to office hours. You have to talk to them when you're cleaning out the lab. You know, talk to them and say, so, you know, why did you decide to get a PhD in organic chemistry, or what did you do, or how did you end up here? They know a lot of people, and if you don't know your professors, like, and or your classmates, you're really hurting yourself, because it's a network. Like I know, like you know, through PreMedCC, I have some people in my classes come up and ask me information about stuff, and I was like, well, I don't know, but I know so and so that would know this. Um, you know, or just putting them in touch with different resources. I think it's all about building a community, is getting that information out there and providing you with those resources. So I think ultimately is you have to put yourself out there, and again, if you're a shy person and this is something that you struggle with, like you have to put that effort in, and it's trust me, I rather sit home, study, hang out by myself, go to work, but you kind of have to be involved in things and make connections with people. It's hard, it's not easy. I'm pretty sure that, you know, I'm not as studious as Vanessa that could sit in the library all day, but I, but yeah. The other thing is, do you want to talk about the UC tap and the UC tag and what is the difference? Because I don't know. I know the tag, but I don't know what the tap.
Sorry. Yeah, sure. Okay. So the difference between UC tag and UC tap is the UC tag TAG is the UC transfer admission guarantee. So like I mentioned before, out of the 9 UCs that have undergraduate programs, only 6 of them currently accept tag. So the schools who do not accept tag is Berkeley, UCLA, and UC San Diego. But all the other ones that do have undergraduate programs do tag. And so basically, you will submit an application to them, you know, listing your information, your major, all the, you know, things that you need to report. And then from that, they'll consider you for a guaranteed admissions if you meet the minimum requirements. So with that, you do need to make sure that you can only tag to one school, and the one school that you do select, you need to make sure that you meet the minimum requirements for that school, and then you usually will be approved for tag. To tag, you need to have a UC TAP account, which is TAP, which is the UC Transfer Admissions Guarantee. So that's the system that I mentioned before that you can go and create an account right now today and input all of the classes that you have completed so far with the grades and the units for those classes. And then you can also put in your planned schedule for future semesters and your current schedule that you're taking of classes that you're currently taking. And then through that portal, when you are ready to apply, you can log into your UC tab within the UC application. And so all of your academics will be transferred to the application. Again, please make sure that you're using the same email account or email address for both applications. So it will be a seamless transfer. And then after you submit your UC application, you can actually so I think by September 30th, if I'm correct, please check that. I'm not for sure on the date, but I definitely know it's before the UC applications due. You need to submit your tag to one UC school, but you still need to make sure that you're submitting your UC application, because if you submit a tag but no application, then you won't get admitted. So that's the difference.
I don't think we have any other questions. Does anybody have any other questions before we let the ladies go? And actually, we kept them longer than we were supposed to. So, like, I have to give them a kidney or something now for keeping them longer than they were supposed to be here. Do you guys have anything to add before you leave? Any words of wisdom? Any words of wisdom or words of inspiration? Aurelia, do you have any words of wisdom?
Like any words. No, do you have some for me? That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Like I would just say something like, I would do things so much differently if I could do it over. I would just say, like, if you just like talk to your professors. That's something that I didn't do that I definitely implore students that I work with now to do. Similar to like how Joe mentioned before, like I really was that student that I thought my professors or they would judge me if I wasn't, because I was applying well in my courses, and maybe if I reached out for help I wouldn't have to retake as many courses as I did because I didn't understand how to study for them. So I would definitely recommend that you do that. And also please look up to see one thing I didn't mention is that you can look up at least for UCLA, you can look up who your UCLA rep is, because each community college in California has a rep for UCLA. So I would recommend that if you're interested in, attending UCLA and you live like not near UCLA, you have a rep and you should, contact them and make sure that you're taking the correct courses and you're making sure that you're, presenting yourself in a manner that's, competitive for admissions for UCLA. Yeah, academics is really, really important for UCLA, but so is involvement on campus and in your community. So just also get involved on your campus or community. It doesn't even have to be affiliated with your campus. If you have like a food pantry or a food bank or something near you, or if there isn't one and you want to start one, like definitely do that. And then, make a difference in your community and yeah, talk about it and sell yourself in your application. Underserved students usually tend to be very humble. I definitely do not sell myself as much as I should. But you have to do that on the application, especially now, especially if you want to get into schools like Berkeley or UCLA. Like could be UCLA, not to both, like this is a serious situation, but UCLA is the most applied to university in the nation. And that could be very detrimental to transfer students because sometimes they could accidentally admit more freshmen. And if they accidentally, quote unquote, admit more freshmen, that means there's less seats for transfer students. So you really need to make sure that you are presenting yourself, that you are talking, like you're bragging about yourself. You need to do that on the application. So that would be my closing words, I guess.
What about you, Nessa?
Yeah, those are like so many great points, Aurelia. I think for me, like I know this is so cheesy, but like there is like a village behind you. And I think that's like what's brought me to where I am now. So again, I'll just say connect with you, as Jubin said, with your professors, with your instructors, with inform those mentorships, continue those relationships, because we are not only just transfer students, but we're pre-med transfer students. And so we need to also think that our end goal is hopefully to continue to med school. And so with that end goal in mind, you have to think about letters of recommendation, MCAT, and so many other things. And so I think starting to make connections now will continue to help you for your med school application. So I've had letters of rec from my community college, because I did take a lot of my like the OChem and like these science prereq courses at community college, that I needed someone to speak about that. So continuing to have those relationships is one, really important. And then also, I think, as again, we're pre-med, so making sure your counselors or whoever you're asking for advice from is again like one step ahead, or like focused on that pre-med route, because otherwise you might be getting advice that might not be for you. I don't know if that makes sense with you too, Javine, but yeah, I think that's one thing that if I could again go back and redo is like finding a counselor who knew exactly like the process as a pre-med transfer, not just a transfer. Yeah, and like keep going, because it's an exciting process. Like have fun throughout. I know, like I said, I didn't go to like sports events and at university, but I wish I did. And I did, like, it's a fun process and you'll get there eventually. It was difficult. I did cry, but I'm getting there this fall, and y'all will too. Yeah, so those will be my last words.
Very cool. Well, since there's no more questions, I'm gonna let you guys go, you ladies go, and thank you for making time, and thank you for staying longer than you were contractually obligated to. And like I said, the only thing that I would add is I put a bunch of links in there. I'm gonna keep this open for a few minutes. Download those links. Definitely, if you're applying this year to UC, check out the CCCP. If you don't have their link, it's in our webpage, and then we also will send out emails and also social media posts about the application thing. I could tell you that it's somebody who got rejected the year before and had a almost, actually no, she had a 4.0 the year that she applied and got rejected from every UC. And then she applied this year and she had a B and got into every UC. So I think what Aurelia and her team does, it's a really wonderful place, and they're doing remote things and all wonderful things. And hope you download the information. And thank you both again for coming. I really appreciate you guys' time. And I'm kind of biased because they're both like people that I know and I respect a lot. So it's kind of awesome to hear them talk. So
No, thank you so much for